Deploying infrastructure is always a mix of planning and firefighting. Sometimes everything works perfectly, other times you're troubleshooting at 2 a.m., wondering what went wrong. Hey guys, my name is Pradeep Gaddamidi. I'm a senior DevOps engineer. My agenda today covers a little bit about my journey and my experiences with incidents, tools, and SRE world. Coming from banking and financial services sector, I started my journey working with legacy systems such as WebSphere, Tomcat, and manual deployments. Custom scripts helped, but they introduced a margin for error that made me appreciate the value of standardized tools like Terraform, Helm, and CI/CD pipelines. This talk is a collection of real-world SRE failures, lessons learned, and the unexpected challenges that come with managing infrastructure. So let me go over my experiences in real world. Let me start with a data center incident. Let me tell you this. Make sure your cloud provider's service terms align with your requirements, especially around RPOs and SLA. When we signed up for GCP, we used Google Cloud Storage with dual region buckets. We assumed this meant our data would be replicated instantly between regions, between different buckets. Then a data center fire hit, and objects in our GCS bucket were unavailable for up to 12 hours. Yeah. We later discovered that GCP's default replication guarantees only 99.9% of newly returned objects replicated within 1 hour, 100% within 12 hours, meaning if a data center disaster happens, there is a chance that some of your object might be replicated, can take up to 12 hours to replicate it to other region. They later recommended enabling turbo replication, which actually guarantees 100% replication to both regions in under 15 minutes, regardless of object size. Wish we would know this before. That way we would enable this feature and we didn't have to face this situation. So what's the lesson here? Always research if a product meets your SLA needs before you go to production. Read the conditions apply details. Seriously, that's going to save you from incidents of this kind. If such features exist, so you wouldn't face these issues. So research the product before you sign up. Let me go over my experience and incident with respect to certificates. So SSL certificate issues are more common than you would expect. A few years ago, public certificate validity dropped from 3 years to 1 year, which means you have to renew your certificates every 1 year. Especially the public wildcard certificates are often reused across multiple places, which makes tracking them harder. So how do you track them? So let's say if you use commercial products like Datadog, look for features like synthetic monitoring, which you could use to track the endpoints and get the certificate expiry data and renew the certificates on time. And if you are using open source such as Grafana, look for Infinity plugin. That way you could query the endpoints and get the certificate information and keep track of the certificates. Also, proper certificate documentation and the locations where they are installed is very important. It sounds basic, but certificate-related outages can be seriously embarrassing. Let me tell you an example. At one of the company, we had an outage because it was a financial client, because an intermediate certificate was missing. Let me explain you certificate terminology in simple terms. The server certificate is signed by an intermediate certificate, and the intermediate is signed by a trusted root. If the complete chain isn't complete, visitors may see an incomplete chain error. So how do you overcome this? The moment you renew any certificate, go to open source online tools like SSL Labs to verify the complete certificate chains and make sure you have your root, intermediate, and the server certificate in place. Also, if you have OpenSSL utility on your command line, just hit the endpoint and use the option called show certs. It's going to show you all the certificate, complete chain. Also, you could look for something called verify written code to be 0 at the bottom. That tells you like your certificate is good and the chain is complete. Let me talk my experience with logging and monitoring. Logs as an SRE, logs are your lifeline during incident, right? They are your lifeline. So if an incident happens, you always look for logs and metrics. So ensure that all systems have proper logging enabled before you even promote them to production, and make sure like those logs are actually forwarded to a centralized logging platform. This should be actually part of your pre-deployment checklist. So let me describe a recent incident. So we had this incident where some of the records were missing from a database, and that database wasn't configured properly to emit content logging. So there weren't many logs in that database. Also, the virtual machines which were connecting to that database had logs, but they weren't forwarded to a central logging system. So we had to look for logs at multiple places, which delayed our investigation. So it's always a good idea to, first of all, have proper logging in place, and second, forward those logs to a centralized system like Datadog or Elasticsearch. If you don't want to use commercial products due to budget constraint, you could always set up open source like Elasticsearch. Likewise, monitoring plays an important role. Let me give you a simple incident happened at my previous company. So I did set up Elasticsearch logging system. I couldn't set up the monitoring for the disk due to various reasons and time constraints. It sounds simple, right? Being an SRE, how could I miss that? But sometimes it's all about the time and priorities. So I missed setting up the disk alert, and moreover, Elasticsearch wouldn't ingest logs when it reaches 80% disk due to the watermark setup. So it's always better to set up these alerts the moment you install these softwares or the moment you install infrastructure. So the best way is to use some configuration management tools like Ansible or Puppet to ensure like these monitoring or logging it are always installed as part of your infrastructure provisioning. You all learn from our mistakes, isn't it? So the takeaway here is always have a centralized logging and monitoring system. That way it's easier to track issues and fix them quickly. Let me brief my experience with Terraform. I didn't had any real incidents with Terraform, but I observed things could be improved at a workspace by following few recommendations. So, if possible, use public Terraform modules provided by cloud vendors unless your use case is truly unique. I spent a lot of time writing custom modules that I later replaced with standardized, well maintained modules from the Terraform registry. It saved time and reduced maintenance. For example, let's say if you want to spin up a GCP VM, there are a couple of options. You could write all the modules and then resources by yourself, or if yours is a simple use case, just try to use the pre-existing public modules from the Terraform registry. And then my second recommendation would be, if possible, try to integrate your Terraform with CI/CD. In my previous workplace, we were all using Terraform, running Terraform from our workstation. You know that sometimes there is a chance like you set up you provision infrastructure, but that doesn't have any approvals from any of your teammates. It's always better to have approval from your teammates when you provision an infrastructure or run any code. So having Terraform plan and apply steps in your CI/CD enables your teammates to review them before the infrastructure is provisioned. Also, you could also use some security tools like Wiz to scan your Terraform code. It catches misconfigurations, exposes secrets, and compliance issues before they hit production. The takeaway here is reuse what's reliable, shift Terraform into your CI/CD workflow. Expect the unexpected. See, SRE isn't just about tools. It's about resilience, adaptability, and curiosity. Sometimes you are solving infra issues, other times you are wearing four hats at once. Yes. But every incident, every mistake, and every fix is a chance to grow. In my last company, I did set up whole monitoring system and I thought I'm done. No. The data which was ingested into Prometheus was coming in different format. Some data was coming in protobuf format. So I had to write a Python code and deploy it in a cloud function to convert that protobuf data into a format which Prometheus understands. So it was an unexpected crash course across languages, formats, and platforms. That's all SRE is about. And one other time, we have chosen Elastic for monitoring and logging, assuming it's a free tier. That the free tier would be enough. Turns out Slack alerts were locked behind a paywall. Basically, we have to upgrade to premium version if we wanted to send any alerts to the Slack. Then we ended up writing our own Python scripts to send those alerts ourselves. So my point here is always pilot tools in dev environments before moving to productions. Because if you know what your requirements better before you even move to production, then you would avoid a lot of manual work. You even know if that product is really worth for you. So the key takeaway here is always pilot things and then try to learn new tech, switch hats, and fix things under pressure. You have to be ready for that. As an SRE, not everything goes according to plan. Sometimes you're learning, piloting, implementing, and fixing all in one day. It's intense, but that's where the real growth happens. Thank you very much for listening to my talk, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Please feel free